So what I recommend is for you to write down, always write down the strategy that you've identified, okay? Write down the results of those 2 questions that we just worked through. So keeping in mind always that our overall strategy is ampersand elimination. Okay, just write it somewhere off to the side of your proof so that if you get lost or overwhelmed, you can just go back to this and go to the beginning, think about how you started off your proof and what your overall goal was. So, as I said before, what we did here when we identified the strategy is we identified the last step that we're going to take in this proof. Okay, so we identified what we're going to do down at the bottom here, the very last step that's going to give us our conclusion A. So, I'm going to start making a little diagram over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down that very last step at the bottom here. So we determined that we were going to use ampersand elimination in order to give us our conclusion A. Okay, the very last step. And now essentially what we're going to do is work backwards. So we're going to try to figure out how on earth, using these rules that we have, we get from A ampersand B to just the sentence A. So what you want to do next, you want to say to yourself, okay, I know I'm going to use ampersand elimination to give me the sentence A. What lines, what sentences does ampersand elimination require in order to work, right? So every single every single rule that we're using, it takes 1 or 2 lines as input. Okay, and this is shown on your handout and in the book. It takes 1 or 2 lines as input. Whatever rule you're using, and then it gives you a certain output. Okay, so some sentence. The way that ampersand elimination works, is it takes a single sentence, it takes some conjunction, so we'll say the conjunction M ampersand N, that's the input, and using this rule as an output, you get the result either one of these conjuncts. So using ampersand elimination, you could use that to get the sentence M on a line by itself, or you could use it to get the sentence N on a line by itself. Okay, so that's a little abstract. We're going to actually see it in action. Okay, so ampersand elimination, as I said, it requires a single sentence. Okay, if you want to eliminate something from an ampersand sentence, that means you need the ampersand sentence itself. Okay, that's what that means here. In order to break something out of this sentence, we need this on a line by itself. So in order to use ampersand elimination to get the sentence A, we need the ampersand sentence, the conjunction that A is embedded in. Okay. So we're going to require a single sentence here. This would stand for like M or N on your handout there. And the sentence we're going to need is the ampersand sentence, the conjunction that A is embedded in. So in order to use ampersand elimination, we need this premise, right? This premise that A is embedded in. So that's what we're going to use here. We're going to use A ampersand B. We're going to input that, use ampersand elimination, and it's going to give us the sentence A. Okay. So next question we ask ourselves, right, before we started off the proof by asking ourselves, okay, where is the sentence A? How are we going to get it from these premises? Now we're looking at the sentence A ampersand B. You know, we need to figure out, do we already have this on a line by itself? Do we have the sentence we need in order to carry out this step? And the answer, of course, is yes, right? We go over to our proof here. We see that line 1 is in fact this sentence that we need in order to use ampersand elimination to give us the sentence A. Okay, so I'll write that here on the diagram. Turns out, happy color, Yes, in fact, we do have A ampersand B already. We've got that on line 1. So what that tells you is you have everything you need already in order to go ahead and finish this proof. Okay, so it's going to be real quick. So we've got A ampersand B. We're going to use ampersand elimination to give us A. So let's go over here and look at that. So we're on line number 2 now. We're going to use ampersand elimination, right? We're using ampersand elimination. We're using ampersand elimination together with line 1, ampersand elimination together with the sentence on line number 1, and it's giving us what? Well, these two things together are giving us the sentence A. A. And then there's one more thing we need in order to complete this line here, right? We've got our sentence that we derived. We've got our annotation with the rule and the line numbers that we used. And then over here we need our assumption set. In this case, the assumption set is going to be the same as the line number here. The way you figure out the assumption set, you go over here to your annotation, look at your annotation, look at the line number that you used, okay? And you go up to that line. So in this case, we used line number 1. Go up to line number 1, and we see that line number 1 itself was an assumption, okay? So that is going to go in the assumption set. So now, it looks like we carried out all the steps that we had planned to over here, right? We had A ampersand B. We used that together with ampersand elimination to give us A. So now we can finish up. If we think we're nearing the end here, we can finish up by asking 2 questions. We ask ourselves, 1, is this here on the last line, is that the conclusion we were looking for? The answer to that is yes, right? Looking at our argument, we see that A was the conclusion of this argument. And then we ask ourselves, is it based on the correct assumption set? So remembering that the point of every proof is to show that this premise here, or the premises, whatever argument you're looking at, guarantees the truth of the conclusion. So we want to show that just based on this premise, we can get the conclusion. And so we check the assumption set on the last line. We see that, okay, we did derive the sentence A, and we derived it based solely on the assumption in line number 1. So that means it's the correct assumption set. We don't have any extra lines. We just took what we were given originally, and that allowed us to drive the conclusion. Okay. So that was a pretty detailed explanation of this very short proof, but I wanted to give you as much information as possible, and I'm going to do another one and try and go a little bit more quickly so you can maybe see how you would think through this when you were getting a little bit more comfortable with the rules. Okay?